Out today to listen to it. Nobody else has ever listened to us. Dick and I were discussing this. It all started very young. Our mothers didn't listen to us, and the wives certainly never listened to us, and our children never listened to us. And my dog doesn't now. I think he's, wants to keep on a good roll. So what we're going to do today is Dick and I have had a trial run on this so that we're well practiced at it. I want to tell you a little bit about the book that started out and ended up to be all that it is. This is called Remembrances of Wars Past, and it's a collection of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry by primarily war veterans. And this is how it all got started. It's a very peculiar thing. I retired, and by the way, my name's Henry Tonn, T-O-N-N. I am not Dick Daughtry. That's my name right there. And the way this got started is interesting in its own right, because when I turned 62, I'm a psychologist by training and had spent 40 years practicing psychology. And when I hit 62, I just burned out. That was enough. And so I thought to myself, now what do I do? And when you're a psychologist for 40 years, you don't know what else to do. I didn't like gardening, and my hip was bad, and I couldn't play golf and so forth. So I did really the only thing that I knew how to do other than practice psychology, and that is I started writing fiction and nonfiction and publishing it. So I had published a bit of stuff in various literary reviews and so forth. And one evening, and while over the past few years since Dick left Daughtry's old bookstore, I've been going over to his house on the weekends and watching sporting events with him. Since Dick in his youth played football and I played tennis, and we like a variety of sports. So we'll sit in his man cave and we'll watch various different sporting events on the weekend. So one weekend about 3 or 4 years ago, we were doing that, telling lies to each other and stuff. And he started talking about the fact that when he was in the Second World War, that he went to the Buchenwald concentration camp one day after it was liberated, which in itself is interesting. But then he started telling me a series of things that he saw there that I thought to myself, I've read about this, and I don't remember those kinds of things being reported. So I thought to myself, this really ought to be written down, because as you know, World War II veterans are beginning to disappear now. In fact, they're dying at a rate of several thousand a day. I also read recently that there was 16 million World War II veterans that came back to the United States from the Second World War, and there's 2 million left. So, and at the rate they're dying off, a lot of this stuff is, soon going to be gone. It's sort of like the Civil War, when these guys had so much to say, and a lot of people weren't very interested. So in any event, I thought I'm gonna get this down. So I had him come to my office, and we sat down, and I put on a tape and tape recorded about 2-hour conversation with him, in which I was asking him various questions about Buchenwald. And so when it was done, I wrote it up and started passing it around to various places. And you'd be very interested in knowing that nobody cared. Nobody was interested. Nobody wanted it. It just got rejected. And which I thought was bewildering, because I do publish a lot, and a lot of stuff that is published is sort of, visiting your grandmother in the nursing home or painting your house or whatever, stuff that I consider a bit trivial. And here was something that was really relevant. So as is usually the case, what I did was I sent it off to a lot of places, 16 in all. The first 15 places, including online literary journals and stuff like that, all rejected it without comment. But the 16th one, by pure luck, happened to be a very well thought of literary journal out of Connecticut called the Connecticut Review, which is supported by the state of Connecticut. By the way, they've gone bankrupt since this, because there's no money for this sort of thing. In any event, they just happened to be doing a war veterans anthology, and so they took it. And she later told me, the editor, she took it because that was the only one she got of World II, because she got a lot of stuff from Vietnam and from Iraq, Afghanistan, and so forth, but that was the only one she had of World War II. So anyway, when she sent both Dick and I a complimentary copy, and I was amazed at the quality of writing in this thing. Here we have all of these people who have gone to war for us. Many of them died. And I was stunned at what tremendous ability they had to tell you about their experience in whatever war they were in. And you may or may not know that Joyce Kilmer, the poet, I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree, died in the First World War. And as a result of that, the government passed some sort of thing where if a person is a nationally known artist or writer or whatever, then they can get a dispensation from the war. And here are all these people who apparently went to war, weren't very well known, and had this great writing skill. So when I got mine, I was asking the editor, who I met later on at a writers' conference, I said, you know, how many, you published 20 pieces, how many of you got stashed away? And she said 80. And I said, you need to make y'all come on in and go to the back if you would like, and get him to bring some more chairs up if you all would like to sit down.
There's 2 or 3 up here.
We have one here.
Oh, there is a chair up there? There's 2 here, and I think there may be one over there.
They've got bunches of chairs back there, so you all need anywhere for.
Yeah, there's one right at the front there.
So what happened was, so what happened was, I told her, I said, you know, you need to make a book of this. I mean, after all, these people are writing stories about combat and about the effects of combat, like post-traumatic stress disorder and so forth. That's important. And she said, I would like to. But she says, nobody will publish a book like this. Nobody wants to read a book like this. And consequently, the publishers just aren't going to publish it. So I decided, fine. You know, I've got the time, I have the money, I have the background. I'm going to publish a book about this. So that's basically what I did. And just to tell you briefly how we went about this, or I did, I built a website and listed my qualifications, because writers won't send stuff to somebody unless they got some qualifications. And then I said, I eventually put an advertisement in a number of online websites saying, I'm looking for World War II stuff. I mean, I'm looking for war stuff. And I said, and it can go back to any war that you want, and preferably I would like it to be veterans and veterans' relatives and so forth. Well, I put this in on March the 1st, and by March the 2nd, my email was flooded. They were sending them in like crazy. I was getting 5, 6, or 7 a day submissions. Now, these are all short stories, nonfiction, poems in chunks of 5. And so, you know, it's the equivalent to you're getting a book every 2 or 3 days. It was just overwhelming, and I'm the only one doing this. And at some point, I just went through a panic, you know. I thought, I can't do this. I'm going to go home. And I literally left work one day and went home and crawled under the covers and pulled the covers up like that and went to sleep. My dog's looking at me like, you know, it's daylight. This is not the time for this. So, but eventually they kept rolling in, and I kept reading stuff, and it turned out that I got 500 submissions total, going back as far as the Civil War, and I chose 45 pieces for the anthology. One woman even sent me something from the Trojan War. And she said she wasn't there, but I got a few pieces from Civil War that were, and in most cases I think these are people who were related to people in the Civil War. I got a lot about the Vietnam War. And one thing I will say as an aside about this, and that is that I got a lot of stuff on the Second World War, and a lot of it written by people over 90 years of age who are still able to write well and so forth. There's 8 pieces in here of the Second World War. The Vietnam veterans tend to be the most bitter, by and large, their work is not very supportive of the government, let's put it that way. And the Iraqi veterans seem to be getting that way, just as this been what I've noticed about all this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you some passages, some of the more interesting passages in here, and then I'm going to read one of Dick's. Dick has two pieces. Oh, I ought to point out that after I was rolling along with this, I was sitting in Dick's man cave and I was chatting about this, and I was going to obviously include the piece on Buchenwald that we had already done. And so Dick says, "I've got more stories." And I said, "Really? I'm just amazed." And he said, "You remember Cool Hand Luke?" Well, Paul Newman says, "I can eat 50 eggs." That's what Dick said. "I've got more stories." And so I decided, okay, we're going to do more stories. So I had him come back over to my office and we taped more stories. And so then I put all that together. And so that's how Dick ended up with two pieces on the Second World War in here. So what I'm going to do is read you sort of a general bits and pieces here from the book as the more interesting ones, I think, and then I'll read one of Dick's, and then if you all want to ask him some questions about some of the things that he has in here, and then we'll sort of play it by ear